Okay. I think it's Aniket is there.
Yes.
And he has anyway made me the co-host. I don't know if Ramji or Ravi are there.
Prayers? No, they are not there today.
Yes, we can start with the prayers. I'll do the logo, this thing and the Gayatri mantra. School prayer.
Yeah, please.
O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is also one with every other. Om Bhurbhuvaswaha Om Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Om Bhurbhuvaswaha Om Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Om Bhurbhuvaswaha Om Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Asato ma Sadgamaya Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amrutangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Yeah. Shall we wait for a couple of minutes? We'll start at 10:35.
Yeah, sure.
I think we are on shloka number 20.
Oh, Malati has come.
So we are on shloka number 20.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, we have completed up to 19. We are on shloka number 20.
Yeah.
We will start at 10:35.
Yeah, at 19 we've done. So today we'll do Krishna Panaji today 20, 21.
Yeah, 20, 21, 23 also. There is not much in these things except for maybe about there are only one or two. I think 25 is important. Up to 25. 20. It's okay. We can go through this chapter fast because it's all descriptive in nature, and there are only one or two aspects which need discussion, further detailed discussion. We will see that in the commentary and essays of Sri Aurobindo.
Okay, so Krishna Paniji actually, if you look at the Bhagavad Gita, the actual book, in that there is no commentary, there's no sort of commentary, there's only a translation of the verses till 31.
Till?
31.
Yeah, I know that.
Okay.
Except that, yes, we can, I'll do one thing. I'll recite about 4 or 5 of them.
Okay.
And then you can read the translation part of it.
Sure.
Then we will go to discussing the thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
So it's 10:35. I will start. I will recite the shlokas. Dyava prithivyor idamantaram hi vyaptam tvayaikena dishascha sarvaha drishtvaadbhutam rupamidam tavogram lokatrayam pravyathitam mahatman अमीहित्वां सुरसंघा विशन्ति केचिद्भीताः प्राञ्जलयो गृह्णन्ति स्वस्तीत्युक्त्वा महर्षिसिद्धसंघाः स्तुवन्ति त्वां स्तुतिभिः पुष्कलाभिः रुद्रादित्या वसवो ये च साध्या Vishveshvinau Marutaschoshmapascha Gandharva Yakshasura Siddha Sangha Vikshante Tvam Vismitaschaiva Sarve Rupam Mahatte Bahuvaktra Netram Mahabaho Bahubahurupadam Bahudaram Bahutam Strakaralam Društva Lokaha Pravyathitasthaham Nabhasprusham Deeptamanekavarnam Vyattananam Deepta Vishalanetram Društva hitvam Pravyathitantaratma Dhrutim na Vindami Shamam cha Vishnu. So you can read the next 5 translation, the translation of the verses from 20 to 25. We will take it up together.
Sorry. Yeah. So 20. The whole space between earth and heaven is filled by thee alone, and also all the religions. Beholding this, thy fierce and marvelous form, O grand soul, the triple world shudders. 21. All the companies of gods enter into thee. Some awed and afraid pray to thee with folded hands. The companies of great seers and siddhas, realized souls, uttering, may there be peace and weal, praise thee with exuberant hymns. 22. The Rudras, Adityas, Vasus, and the Sadhyas, Vishwadevas, and the 2 Ashwins, the Maruts, and the Ushmapas, the Gandharvas, Yakshas, Asuras, and the company of Siddhas, all have their eyes fixed on thee in amazement. 23. Seeing thy great form of many mouths and eyes, O Mahabahu, Shri Krishna, with many arms and thighs and feet, with many bellies and many terrific tusks, the worlds and peoples are terror-struck. So too am I. 24. Seeing thee touch the skies, O Vishnu, radiant with numberless hues, thy mouth agape, thy enormous eyes burning, my soul is anguished. I know not composure nor peace of mind. Do I read 25 also?
No, not necessary. 25 we'll deal it separately.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Kindly mute yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. You see, this is, as I mentioned last time also, is a descriptive explanation or description of the cosmic form. In the earlier two verses, 18 and 19, we have seen him talking about the formless, the nameless, that which is beyond description. Because there he has used the terms Akshara, Avyaya, Shashvata Dharmagopta, Sanatana, Anadimadhyantam, and so on and so forth, which are of the nature of a description about his formlessness also. Now, again, coming back to this, he is saying the entire space between the earth and the sky is occupied by you, is pervaded by you. And also all the corners and points in the sky, the Dishascha Sarvaha. We talk about Dasha Disha, 10 directions, 4 cardinal directions, 4 corners, and top and bottom. East, west, north, south. Then the northeast, southwest, southeast, north, southwest, and northwest, and the upper region and the lower region. So these are the 10 directions which they talk about. He says all these things are, you have occupied all the directions. You have pervaded all the points in space. And by beholding your marvelous form, which is very terrifying and menacing. All the three worlds are overwhelmed by it. And interestingly, in the 5 verses which we have read, in 3 of the verses, the term pravyathita is used. Pravyathita means terribly fearful and disturbing. Bhitam prachalitam va, he says. The commentary of Adi Shankara says, Bhitam prachalitam va. Prachalita means disturbed. Bhita means a kind of fear born out of this. By the very perception of this cosmic form, by seeing this cosmic form, that's what I am able to see. And he is able to see all the hosts of gods, Surasangha. They are all entering into him. Some are frightened and some are praising him with folded hands. Pranjalayo grunanti. The word grunanti means stuvanti. Gruna means stuti, to praise, to extol, to worship. And the Maharshi and the Siddha Sanghas, Siddhas are the perfected beings. And the Maharshis, the great sages and saints, they are also entering into you by uttering the term which is called Swasti. Very interestingly, the term Swasti is translated by Sri Aurobindo as, may there be peace and weal. If you remember, weal, W-E-A-L, weal is an old English term, and the two terms normally used as a pair of opposites is weal and woe. W-O-E-O is sorrow. Weal means something which is positive, something which is of the nature of happiness. So, Swasti is very beautifully translated by Sri Aurobindo as, may there be peace and weal. Swasti is Su Asti. Su is good. The prefix Su means great, good, immense, excellent. Swasti. Swasti is a very beautiful term in the Sanskrit language to convey a benediction of goodness, of excellence, of peace, of prosperity. That's why there are several Shanti mantras which start with the term Swasti. And one of them is the Loka Samasta, the verse, Loka Samasta, the mantra. The first beginning is Swasti Prajabhya Paripalayantam. It starts with the term Swasti. So, Swasti is a beautiful term, and the translation of Sri Aurobindo is also very beautiful. And who are these ones who are uttering this Swasti? They are the Maharshis and the Siddhas.
Sir, can we also? We can also auspiciousness.
Yeah, righteous, right?
Auspiciousness.
Yeah, auspiciousness also, yes. Swasti is auspicious also, yes. So is that excellence.
Yes.
It is that goodness. It is that sacredness. It is that auspiciousness. All these meanings are included in that beautiful term.
Yes.
So that's the beauty of the Sanskrit language also. See, one particular term can have several shades of meanings, several other meanings which describe, which evoke in us different feelings and emotions when we talk about these terms.
Yeah.
And they are all praising him with hymns. Stutibhi pushkalabhi, with beautiful hymns being sung in abundance. Then he again comes to the other beings. He has talked about the Surasangha, the hosts of divine beings, the Maharshis and Siddhas. And then he now comes to the other divine beings, Rudra, Aditya, Vasus, Sadhyas, Vishvedevatas, Ashwins, the Maruts, the Ushmapas, the Gandharvas, the Yakshas, the Asuras, the Siddhasanga. You see, everything is included. There's nothing to exclude in that cosmic form. As I told you earlier also, I don't mind repeating for our own purpose. See, these are all hosts of divine beings, and when we talk about the 33 principal gods, in the Vedas, they are the Rudras, Adityas and Vasus and the Ashwini Putras. The Adityas are 12 in number. Therefore, they are called as Dwadash Aditya. You can Google and you will get the names also. Mitraha, Aryama, Pusha, all these names are there. And in fact, the Umeshi may also be knowing it. See, the Surya Namaskara. The Surya Namaskara is in 12 postures. And it is said that one has to repeat this posture 12 times. That means you have to do the Surya Namaskara 12 times. And each time invoking a particular name of Surya. Yes, Umeshji?
Yes, sir, that's true. 12 asana, it's a sequence of 12 asanas with
Yes.
12 chanting.
12 times, and each time you chant at the beginning,
Different.
you chant Suryaya Namaha,
Yeah.
Mitraya
Yeah.
Namaha,
Correct.
and so
Pravaya
on.
Namaha. Yeah.
So that is the importance of Surya, and each month a particular form of Surya is set to come up, and then the firmament, you see the sun with it's a very subtle way of representing the different forms of the sun. In a particular month, the sun is most welcome. In a particular month, this sun is very fierce. In a particular month, it's not visible at all. When it's clouded and there is this rainy season, you don't see it. So that is 12 Adityas. Then there are Ekadasha Rudras, 11 Rudras. So 12 plus 11 is 23. Then Ashtavasus, 8 Vasus. And interestingly, if you have seen the Mahabharata, Bhishma is said to be one of the Vasus. Bhishma is said to be one of the Vasus. So it is the Vasavaha is that 8. 23 plus 8 is 31. And then the Ashwini Putras, they are twins. So that totally it will be 33. Then you have the Sadhyas. And Sadhyas are a particular type of divine beings. Then the Vishvedevatas. These Vishvedevatas are also very important. There are about some say 9, and there are some give about 11 Vishvedevatas also. These Vishvedevatas are universal Devatas. Vishvedevatas, the term, if you want to translate it, is universal gods. That means in every activity, in every human endeavor, these Vishvedevatas are there. If somebody has observed very carefully any Shraddha ceremony, in the Shraddha ceremony, one of the persons invited as a bhokta, as a partaker of the food on the that day, one of them represents these Vishvedevatas. There is a Pururava and a Mardrava. They call it as Ardrava and sometimes Mardrava also. There is Pururava, Ardrava, Samjikanam. The Pururava and Ardrava are the two Vishvedevatas who appear in the Shraddha ceremony. See, what happens in a Shraddha ceremony is, the Pitru Devatas invoked in the form of one of the priests who come for partaking the food of the Shraddha. So he represents the Pitru Devatas. Another represents the Vishwa Devatas. And a third one, he represents Sri Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu is considered as Yajna Rakshaka. He is the one who protects every ceremony. Yajna Rakshaka. And all Vedic ceremonies, one interesting thing we have to note is, all Vedic ceremonies are performed only after invoking Agni. Every ceremony, Agni is the most important Devata who is invoked. In every ceremony, there are 16 ceremonies. We talk about Shodasha karmas. In all the 16 ceremonies, starting from the conception on to the death, all the 16 ceremonies, Agni is very important. And the protector of Agni or Yajna is Mahavishnu. So that's why normally you have 3 priests who partake food on the day of Shraddha, according to the Vedic ritual. And Vishwa Devatas form an important part of the Vedic, the ceremony connected with the Shraddha. Then there are Maruts. Maruts are another category. These Maruts, very interestingly, they say they are in groups of 7. Groups of 7. 7 into 7, there are 49 Maruts. These are the ones who create these storms and swirls and whirlpools and tornadoes and siroccos and whatnot. So each one has been classified as a group of Maruts. Then Ushmapas. Ushmapas, Adi Shankara says Ushmapas are Pitaras. Pitru Devatas are called Ushmapas. The word Ushmapa means one who eat or drink that which is hot, that which is served to them hot. See, Yajna also, that's why, see, these are all very interesting traditions we have. In a Pitru Yajna, that means in a Shraddha, the Devatas invoked in the person of that priest, they have to be served very hot food. Very hot. Everything has to be served hot to them. Whenever I perform the Shraddha, I make it a point to see that every item is served to them hot. So that is the very purpose is that, because it is to be consumed very freshly, very hot, and then through that person in whom the Pitru Devatas have been invoked, it reaches them in a subtle form. It's not that they consume these things in gross form. They consume these things in a subtle form through them. The subtle energy generated by the food offered to the priest is received by the Pitru Devatas. That is why the term Shraddha itself comes from the word Shraddha. Unless you perform it with a tremendous amount of Shraddha, with the dedication, devotion, reverence to your ancestors, they may not appear. They may not appear at all. Generally, what happens, unfortunately, is because we don't understand the mantras, we don't understand it, we perform it very casually and in a very ritualistic manner, and most of the time with inattention.
Clarification here.
Yes, sir.
See, as per theosophical teachings, what we have learned is there are different levels in the afterlife.
Right.
and we are supposed to develop detachment also.
Right.
So that means once our whatever forefathers and elders have passed on, like we will pass on one day,
Yeah.
we would have moved further along. Is it
No.
necessary to call them again?
Yes, sir. You see, what happens is there are two things. See, they once after death, it is said that the Theosophical literature says that they go to the astral world. In the astral world, depending upon the strength and energy they have generated through their desires, the average range, the range of years, number of years is said to be between 20 and 80 in the astral world itself. What the clairvoyant observations have shown that generally an ordinary person is confined to the astral world for 20 years. People with very strong desires and very strong attachments and all, they have been found to be there up to 80 years. Our years, not the astral world years. In terms of the earthly years, they have found people who are there even up to 80 years. This is what has been observed through clairvoyant vision. So it is essential to perform minimum for 20 years after death. After 20 years, if they have moved on to the lower mental world, from there also there is a possibility of invoking them and bringing them down during the Shraddha ceremony. And generally in the mental world, in the lower mental world, it is said that the average life period varies between 700 years and 1500 years. That is one thing. So you are performing Shraddha during your lifetime is all covered by the astral world and the lower mental world in which the Pitrudevatas are residing. But if we strictly follow certain things, invoking when they are happily in the mental world may not be necessary. May not be necessary to invoke them and bring them down from the lower mental world, because that's called as the heavenly world. And the general terms that are used are for hell. The astral world is mostly like hellish. And that's what they call it as Hades in the Greek and Roman mythology. And the Swargaloka, Swar, is what is called as Elysium or heaven. So if you take it from the from our Indic perspective, from the Vedic perspective, it is Bhuhu, Bhuvaha and Swaha. This is the Bhuloka. The next Loka, the astral world, is the Bhuvarloka. And the lower mental world is the Suvarloka or Swarloka, and that is what is called as Swarga. Swar or Swarga is the same term. So they are still confined to the Dehatma in a way. So it is if you are performing the Shraddha, it is important you perform with this sense that you are invoking them. So generally, as I said, if you take the range between 20 and 80 years, you can expect the Pitrudevatas to be there for 30-40 years on a midpoint. Midpoint, we take it, say, 40 years. So in one's own lifetime, you can cover it.
Thank you. Very clear. Thank you.
That is the idea. See, what happens is, sir, you are not really performing for their sake. Whether you perform for their sake or not, that effect will be maximum based on the performer's Shraddha. It is the performer who is doing it to remember his ancestors and invoke them at least once in a year in order to see that their welfare is taken care of in that heavenly or in that other world. Suppose we don't do it, they lose minimum. The effect on them will be minimum. Unless there is somebody who is with a strong desire that my children should perform my Shraddha they should perform every year, they should perform it. If I carry such a thing and I die, and if my children don't perform it, then I suffer myself on account of the strong desire I am carrying. It's not necessary at all. I need not carry. It is out of gratefulness, out of gratitude, and out of conveying a thankful this thing that we remember our ancestors. We are here because of our ancestors. That's why the Veda very clearly says, the Upanishad, the Taittiriya Upanishad very clearly says, Deva Pitrukaryabhyam na pramaditavyam. Do not neglect Deva and Pitrukaryas. Swadhyaya pravachanabhyam na pramaditavyam. So don't, if you, prajatantum ma vyavachhetsi, don't cut the lineage. The lineage has to continue. Not for mundane worldly purposes, sir. It's not that you are invoking at that and that you should have a son and the son will continue. It's only for a spiritual purpose. If you don't have a son, all the better. It doesn't matter, because who remembers you is more important than the gender of the person. And the mantra provides for so many things. The Shraddha mantras provide for so many factors. Ye agni dagdhaha, ye nagni dagdhaha, ye vajata kulema. See, it says those who have not been properly cremated, those who have died at sea, those who have died without progeny. All these people are invoked in the Shraddha. So suppose I am there and I die and I don't have male progeny, it doesn't matter. Whoever in my lineage, my brothers or brothers or father's brothers lineage, whoever is performing, there also they have made a provision to invoke and see that all these people are taken care of. And we have been provided with the Mahalaya. Pitrupaksha, the second half of the Bhadrapada month is called as the Pitrupaksha, which universally all over India, all over all the states of India believe in the Pitrupaksha. They worship the ancestors. Even if you are not doing the Shraddha on the particular day according to the Indian calendar, if you perform it during that Pitrupaksha, that itself is sufficient. If not you, if somebody else is doing it also, he will be invoking everybody in the family. Both sides. Mother's side, father's side, father-in-law's side, mother-in-law's side. And it makes a provision to invoke your friends and relations and acquaintances. If somebody close to me has passed away, suppose somebody very close to me, like say Commander Nirmal, I can invoke them in the Bhadrapada month, because he is a dear friend to me. He is close to me. I know him. So this provision is made for, and you invoke the spirit of the Guru. Whoever has, and in the process you invoke Adi Shankara also, who is considered to be Paramaguru in your tradition. So you can see, this is the beauty of the tradition that is formed. Unless we understand the implications of it and do it with that proper Shraddha, it doesn't really. It's Leadbeater very beautifully says one more thing. Whichever mantra it may be, however you may utter, with all mistakes and faults and improperly, whatever it is, still there is a minimal effect that is always there. If you don't utter it properly, it doesn't become zero. The minimum effect, maybe 10% or 20% is prescribed. However badly you may utter the mantra, even then it will carry that minimum energy. So invoking it and uttering it is more important. The better you utter, the more energy and reverence and gratitude and dedication you bring to it, the effect will be multifold. That is the beauty of the system. See, why I am saying this is, I have been closely following these things and trying to understand the meanings of these mantras and what exactly, and every time I am wonderstruck by the kind of provision that has been made in the Shastras. The kind of provisions that have been made. What to do if so and so has died? How do I don't know. See, somebody has died in an air crash. Somebody has died somewhere in an earthquake. He has simply gone into the earth. What am I supposed to do then? Huh? Yeah, just 1 second, sir. నేను ఒక్క 15 minutes తర్వాత కాల్ చేయనా? వెబినార్ లో ఉన్నాను, ఒక 15 minutes తర్వాత కాల్ చేస్తాను. 10-20 minutes. Okay, bye. So you see, this is the beauty of it. So it is important to know these things and do it. Once you know it, you will do it much better. So all these people are.
So yes, sir. Just a few days back, one of my classmates and a colleague from HL, they just died of heart attack. Just ignore.
Yes. Yeah. Hello, Janaki Ramji.
Yes.
You were saying something. They just died.
Oh, my classmate, one classmate who was chief engineer of Tamil Nadu Electricity Board, and another former colleague. Both were in good health, evidently. But just like that, maybe heart attack.
No. No, but you can sit at home and invoke them. Yeah, no,
So
you can invoke.
You gave a very good explanation of all the background and the need, and also those people who unfortunately die in like accidents and air crash.
No, it so happened my co-brother's aunt, she died of COVID, and in that place they said that they didn't have firewood to burn for cremation, and they simply buried her. They are called as Anagni Dagdha. Those who haven't been cremated. So there's a beauty. See, if we go into each aspect of these mantras and find the deeper meaning, you will find the kind of elaborate nature of the things and how they have taken care of everything and provided for them in the mantras. A very good friend of mine, a doctor, that gentleman also passed away recently when I was in the US. He actually he asked me to prepare flexi, these flexi boards for his daughter's marriage long back, giving the relevant mantra for the marriage and the English translation. So I have done that for him. So he prepared these flexi boards and put it in the marriage hall when his daughter's marriage was performed. So his intention was that, sir, people should at least know the meaning of these mantras. So I had prepared it, the original mantra in Sanskrit, then a Telugu translation, and then an English translation. But at least people don't gossip, or at least, if not, if 500 people come to the marriage, at least 5 people, if they look at it and they are interested, that's enough. Not that all the 500 will be interested in reading them and all. But even if 5 are there, that will be useful. That's how we spread. That's why they see that this thing also says Swadhyaya, Pravachana, Abhyam. Both Swadhyaya and Pravachana are both required. Self-study and conveying what you have studied is also important. You can't keep it to yourself and keep on studying and not doing anything about it. Is not correct. You talk to your wife, you talk to your children, you talk to your acquaintances, you talk to your relations, you talk to your satsangis about it. That's how you spread it. Okay. So again, so I'll come back to this. So he's talking about Rudras, Adityas, Vasus, Sadhyas, Vishwe Devatas, Ashwini Putras, the Maruts, the Ushmapas, that is the Pitrus, Gandharvas, Yakshas, Asuras, and the Siddhas. All these people, he says, Vikshante Tvam Vismitas Chaiva Sarve. They are looking at you with wonder, looking at you with a sense of amazement and awe. That's what he is seen in the cosmic form. Then he says, Rupam Mahatte Bahava Bahuvaktra netram. I can see so many mouths and eyes and arms and bellies, and I am able to see your mighty tusks. Karala damshra, damshra karala, Vishwalu, and all this is causing a kind of consternation, a kind of awe, fear, and it is causing them that great sense of disturbance. Then he says, I am able to see you touching the sky. You are so enormous. The Vishwarupa is so immense. And I can see all the hues and colors in you. Deeptaneka varnam. And I can see your face with all open eyes and mouths, and it's so vast. And that is causing me also great anxiety and consternation and terrified. I am terrified by it. And I am losing my courage and my inner calm, he says. Dhrutim na vindami shamam cha Vishnu.
Terrified by it, when I was reading this Gita, suddenly it flashed to me, and I want to share how Bhakta Prahlada would have felt. He was a small boy when and then Narasimha Avatara came out of the pillar, and then those two would have had a terrible battle. How the child would have felt and afraid, and my God, I can't imagine.
No, the beauty is the child is imbued with the spirit of Vishnu right from childhood. See, that's what Narada does to him when he is in the mother's womb. He gives the child the Narayana mantra, the Ashtakshari mantra, Om Namo Narayanaya. Narada goes on repeating to the womb. And the beauty of the story is that he is narrating the Bhagavata to his mother. But his mother, because she was almost at the verge of delivery, she was so tired, and then she slept away when he was narrating the Bhagavata. But very strangely, Narada used to hear whenever he was narrating the story. It is we Indians have this habit of saying and no. So that means you are responding to it. So he found that this response was coming. Then he later on found that the response was not coming from the mother but the child in the womb. So Prahlada was absorbing all that, and he was imbued with that spirit of Narayana. And Nrsimha is that avatar of Narayana. So even though he was terrified by that form, he was not so terribly disturbed by it, because his father wanted him to be invoked, and he said, yes, is he in this pillar? Yes, he is very much in the pillar. He breaks the pillar and comes out of it. And the story of Nrsimha and Nrsimha Avatara goes further. Nobody could pacify him. After killing Hiranyakashipu, he rushes into the forest. Nobody is able to control him. It is a terrible form with a lion's face. And this symbolism, you see, lion's face and man's body, man's face and the lion's body. You know the Sphinx in Egypt. The Sphinx in Egypt is the reverse of it. It is a man's face and the lion's body. You see that Sphinx sitting like this? Near the pyramids, you can actually see, you can Google it and you will see that it has a lion's body and a human face. And very interestingly, I found in the Zarathustra, in the Parsi religion, one of my very good friends, he is much elder to me, but a very close family friend of my father also, and all of us. He also passed away last year. He was in his 80s. His name is Ardashir Minochar Vacha. Vacha is his surname. He is a Parsi gentleman. You know the meaning of Ardhashir Minochar? Ardhashir means, Ardha means Sagam, a half. Saga is the half of it. And Sher means lion. Minochar means the lion faced Ardhashir. So he is half lion and half man. Is the Zoroastrian tradition also is there. So jokingly, I used to call him as Narsimha. Sir, your alternative name in the this thing is Narsimha. So he is Ardhashir Minochar. So that this composite creations are there in almost all traditions. So see, and another reason which we should understand here, when Arjuna says that my inner self is deeply troubled, Antaratma, my Antaratma is Pravyathita, and he says Dhrutim na vindami, I am unable to withhold it, I am unable to withstand it, and I have lost my inner peace, calm. Vi shamam cha Vishnu, dhrutim na vindami shamam cha Vishnu. The reason for this is that this sight for Arjuna was given artificially, it was given temporarily, and in an artificial manner the consciousness was elevated. Because this vision is temporary and artificially acquired by Arjuna, he could not withstand it. Again, our Professor Ravi Ravindra comes into this thing. It's more a case of withstanding than understanding. You should be able to absorb that, capable of absorbing that great energy that comes into along with the elevation of the consciousness. That is where the whole issue is. And therefore he says, I am unable to withstand it. My inner being, my Antaratma is totally disturbed. I don't find peace. I am unable to, I have lost my bearings. So that is the state of Arjuna in which he describes all these things. We have another maybe 5-10 minutes to go. If there is any question, we can take it up, because next one I want to deal with it in a different way, because here he talks about the Kala, which is the principal aspect of the essays on the Gita. The chapter, the title of the chapter is Time the Destroyer by Sri Aurobindo. And that refers to this particular sloka where he says, Kalanala Sannibhani. You are like the all-consuming fire of time. Time is a great aspect which we need to understand. We need to have a deeper understanding of space, time, and causation, which are the three aspects according to Vedanta in manifestation. In manifestation, we find these three aspects dominant. And the Brahman is beyond these three. He is beyond Desha, Kala, and Karya Karana Sambandha. Beyond space and time and causation. That's why in the theosophical literature, in the secret doctrine, Madame Blavatsky calls it as the causeless cause. It's a poetic way of putting that how did the Brahman come about? How is it that there is no, if he has been created, that means there should be a cause prior to him and all that. They say it's not there. Because he neither belongs to time nor space, nor there is any possibility of causation creating that Brahman. The Brahman is eternal and he is there. That is the reason why he is addressed as Sat, Chit and Ananda. He is that eternal existence, eternal consciousness and eternal bliss that is there, which is beyond space, time and causation. And Kala is that exactly. Kala refers to time, and that is the consciousness, the stream of consciousness which creates this past, present, and future. And also all the phenomena in the world are manifested in space and time. Okay? In space and time, we are going to it. There is some chat here. Beenaji says, are we going to talk more on the fears form? It is so beautifully put as marvelous and fear form, the creator and the destroyer, which is life. Yeah, see, this is at once he is marvelous and he is fierce, as you have rightly said. See, because it is so immense and it is so all-inclusive. Nothing is excluded in it. So obviously it creates that sense of awe and a kind of fear. And at the same time, you cannot take your eyes away from it. It is so marvelous in that sense. It is so brilliant. So that's the duality, or that's the nature of the whole cosmic form which is seen. See, this is as I said earlier also, this is experienced by Arjuna at a totally different level of consciousness. Only when he has come back out of that consciousness, all these descriptions are coming into picture. When he is in that state, there is no description. When he has come back, all his mental faculties are back into it, and then he is able to imagine or see based on whatever he has known about it. So when you come back, there is again a limitation. So that's how the whole form is described. And there is some other chat earlier to it. 7 steps in marriage ceremony. Yeah, the Saptapadi. There's a beautiful explanation for that also. Sometime later on, if you remember, remind me, I'll do one thing. I'll have to trace out that I have a Word document of these mantras and their meanings in English, the mantras of marriage. I have, I think I've stored it somewhere in my mail also, email. I'll trace it out and maybe post it in the WhatsApp group. Maybe somebody, if they can, maybe tomorrow or day after, if they can send a reminder, I'll do it. Otherwise, I keep forgetting so many things. Yeah.
Krishna Pani, Malti here. Can I ask you a question?
Yes, please. Yes, please. Please, Malti.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say that, in my case, being an only child and a girl, when my parents passed away and I wanted to do the Tiri every year or whatever it is, they said, you're a girl and you're a daughter and you can't do it. But what some of the aunts and my mother's relatives and all told us was, there's a place in Chennai. I think there are many places now everywhere where you can get the Tithi done even if you are a girl, and you pay a certain sum and give the details of when that person passed away, etc., with their nakshatra and their Tithi date and all, and then they'll do it and they'll send you the prasadam and feed 8 Brahmins. So I've been doing that ever since each of my parents passed on. My mother was doing it for my father, and I continue even now. And for my mother, I also do it every year, and I get the prasad from there.
I'll tell you the secret. See, people are afraid of because they don't know the Shastra. There are 2 things. The Shastra, the Dharma Shastra says that the Dauhitra, the son's and daughter's son can perform it.
Oh, okay.
It means your son has the right to perform it.
Oh, okay.
And especially if you have inherited any property of your parents, and your son is enjoying it, it is all the more imperative on him to perform the ceremony, in spite of the fact that both his parents are alive.
Oh, okay.
See, both the parents being alive, see, sometimes there is a misnomer, there is a misconception that if parents are alive, you should not perform Shraddha. That's a wrong thing.
Right.
That's a very wrong thing. The Dharma Shastra very clearly says that along with the inheritance of property, in your case, your only child, your son automatically might have inherited or will inherit in the process the property which has come to you through your parents.
Okay.
So he is bound to perform that actually. The Shastra says so. So it is important that way. See, for example, my wife, they are all 4 daughters only.
Okay.
So I perform the Shraddha for my father-in-law and mother-in-law both annually.
Oh, okay.
But the adhikara is not mine.
Right.
I invoke the name of my son.
Okay.
And then perform them.
Oh, okay.
The moment the son is the Upanayana of the son is performed, then he becomes eligible to perform it, irrespective of the fact that whether the parents are alive or not. That's a wrong thing, wrong conception. Shraddha is a punya tithi. It is not something inauspicious. It is something very auspicious.
Okay.
That's why in the northern belt they call it as punya tithi.
Okay.
It's a punya karma.
Okay.
Only performing of cremation and other things, there is a different shastra for it. I will not go into it now.
Oh, okay.
Performance of cremation is something totally different from performing of the Shraddha annually.
Okay.
So if the in the tradition, either your son can perform it or your husband can perform it, invoking the name of the son.
Oh, okay.
In either case, no, I have been doing it. I have been doing it for the past 35 years for my father-in-law now.
Oh, wonderful.
Even before my son was born.
Okay.
And as long as my mother-in-law was alive, she was considered as the karta, and I was the person who was only doing it.
Oh, okay.
When my mother-in-law also passed away, then it had to go to my son.
Oh, okay.
The Dharma Shastra says that.
Yeah.
Accordingly, it can be done. That's what I am saying. One needs to understand the Dharma Shastra very clearly and go through the original. There are Dharma Sindhu is there, Nirnaya Sindhu is there. There are several books which elaborate on all these things.
Okay.
All these doubts are clarified there.
Okay.
Okay, sir? Okay, madam?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah.
See, it is preferable that somebody who has known the person who has passed away doing it is most preferable. That is therefore you will have a greater bondage, isn't it? You will have a closer bondage with a person instead of some XYZ doing somewhere.
Definitely.
That is only the last alternative.
Okay.
But the best alternative is this.
But told to me by the most orthodox Brahmin relatives of my mother, because they said, you don't even do anything. No. This place you put, that is the best. You don't.
No, because see, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Unfortunately, we have lost the tradition, and there are no persons who actually know the Shastra.
Exactly.
I'm talking about it from the Dharma Sindhu and Nirnaya Sindhu are two beautiful books which elaborately talk about all these doubts. Any doubt you have on the Dharma Shastras, they are clarified here.
Okay.
And from there only I am interpreting it. Especially a person who has inherited the property of his maternal grandparents.
Okay.
He has an obligation to perform this.
Oh, okay. I'll catch my son now.
Okay. Good. No, if he had seen his grandparents, it is much more better.
Yeah, definitely. Because my father, in a way, he adored my son.
Yeah.
And my daughter, of course. But at the same time, the boy had a kind of a edge on this. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ramchandranji, I'll respond to it. I'll send my email address to you by post, by WhatsApp message. Okay, I'll send it. But don't bother too much about these things about Shraddhas and all. See, let us take care of the living beings first. The dead will take care of themselves. These are only, see, if you, that's what I said, if you have great amount of reverence and regard and respect for them, all these things really matter. Okay, so it's more important to take care of your parents when they are alive than performing Shraddha after they die. Isn't it? So these are all for what I was trying to tell you is that the scheme of things, the Shastra provides for all these things, the mantras provide for all these aspects which are covered in such a beautiful manner if you properly understand the mantra. That is the only thing.
Krishnapani, I think everything at the end, if it is down to Shraddha, because like
Yes.
on one wall, I have all the pictures of my ancestors, all the dead ancestors, but I've had such a great, loving relationship with them that I want to, I want to respect them, I want to love them, and I want their presence also, their blessings and presence. And so a lot of people say, no, you can't put this up. I said that I don't care about what anybody has to say. It's my feelings for them, and I'll do what I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely true. See, that's what is important for this purpose.
Yeah.
See, what happens? I have a problem with this. I have my family priest who comes here every year for all the occasions. When I keep asking, when he brings other priests along with him for the ceremonies and all, they are terribly afraid. See, unfortunately, there is another problem also. What happens is, when he is not available, he informs somebody to go to my house for performing the Shraddha and all. They are afraid. They say, no, sir, this fellow knows the mantras. So he'll catch hold of us if we do not utter it properly, if we do not understand the meaning. We have only just learnt it by rote, and then with all mistakes and all, they perform these things. Unfortunate, it's most unfortunate that all these so-called priests, they don't know, they have never tried to learn Sanskrit in the first place. That's what I've been fighting against them. See, it's your profession. It's your profession. You are in that profession and you don't learn it. How do you expect anybody else to learn it? Unfortunately, this degeneration has set in because we are also like that. They are also like that. Everybody is. We are all contributing to this chaos and mess. Yes, sir. Subbarao Nagarajanji. It is important to remember and revere our ancestors every day. Yeah. Yes, that is what it is. That's what it is. It is important to remember on a daily basis. See, that's what we need to do. It's not that you perform a ceremony and that will take care of that. No. This is on a daily basis that you remember them. You are absolutely right, Nagara Subbarao.
These are in a way frightening also.
Yeah. No, we need not be afraid of anything. As I said, lead a good life. Leading a good life is important. Performing Shraddha is only it is an expression of your own reverence, because there is a spiritual connect to it. There is a spiritual connect to it. How 1 year here is 1 day there. All these things are discussed. I think in the Life After Death, there is a book by C.W. Leadbeater that gives us so many other details also as to how they go about with it. You can get this book also. It's a small book, Life After Death, and why we should not mourn and all that. Okay. So it's already 11:35. So they can hear us here in the sense not physically, but they can, Anuji, they can connect to you through a vibratory mechanism through the invocation. The invocation says Ashravaya. So the invocation, the invocation produces certain vibrations which can be conveyed to the subtler bodies in which the Pitru Devatas are there. I'll tell you one more interesting thing if you have 1 minute's time. See, in the Pitru Loka, there is lateral inversion. Like in the mirror, if you see, there is lateral inversion. Left appears as right and right appears as left. That is precisely the reason why we change the sacred thread which we use while performing Shraddha. Normally, if we wear it on the left shoulder, we transfer it to the right shoulder. Because for them, it is they see it as though it's the left shoulder. And we perform it the other way around, so that they see all these things are yatha adarshe tata pitruloke is an Upanishad mantra which says in the pitruloka it is like the adarsha. Adarsha means a mirror. Just as you see in a mirror, that's how they see in the pitruloka. Many people don't know this. Why do you change the direction of your sacred thread when performing it? They don't know. Simply because somebody asks, Raju sir, you turn it this way, turn it that way. They perform it very mechanically without understanding it. The reason is, for them it is the right thing. Because there is lateral inversion, like in a mirror. So that's a very interesting thing which the Upanishad, there is an Upanishadic statement also in referring to this. Okay? Okay, sir. So we can close it now. It's already 11:37.
Yes, we can close.
1 hour. It's more than 1 hour. Suman Goenka.
Yeah.
Sumanji, can you do the Loka Samasta?
Yes.
Please.
Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Hari Shri Krishna Namaste.
So we'll meet with Krishna Pani again on Sunday 10 o'clock, and we have the school programs as usual. So we have a program this evening, the school program, and we have something tomorrow morning.
Beenaji, tomorrow evening.
Yes.
I think you have posted in the School of Ancient Wisdom this thing also. You can ask them about tomorrow's program. We have a dialogue with Professor Piero Formica today evening. We have this program conducted by Rutambara Wellness. He is a professor of economics, and he heads an institution of innovation. He has written a beautiful book called The Econosense, and there are a lot of spiritual insights in that book. As I mentioned, we have a lot of cultural, spiritual, social and spiritual insights in his book. We are going to discuss that. So today we have that program between 7 and 8:30 p.m. Okay, Anuji, please remember your question. Note down your question so that we can ask in the next. You can ask them in the next session. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Krishna Pani. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.